What's up, guys? As you know, I've been having difficulties and just not wanting to do certain manga reviews. You know, sometimes it can pile up to be like 2 hours worth of work to get a single week's worth of manga chapters out. Yet there's certain mangas that I can't resist. There's certain mangas where it's not a chore. It is something I would love to do. And the manga series I read, the many I read, they have sort of funneled down, and there's only really one that I love beyond a passion, and it's because it never ceases to disappoint me. I truly believe in the last 60 chapters, not once has a single chapter disappointed me even slightly. Okay, maybe slightly, but for the most part, every single chapter has almost been on point. And ever since the invasion started during the sort of gourmet cooking fest, in fact, I would say even since the start of the gourmet cooking fest arc, where Komatsu went in to cook and compete, almost every chapter has been sort of one-upping the chapter before. It's like every single freaking mini sort of fight going on in this whole arc. It's like every chapter after that has been a one-up of the chapter before. It's like, oh, you've seen power levels? How about now? And then the next chapter after that is, how about now? And how about now? And it just keeps going. And it's crazy because the author does it so good by he's spacing it so that it's each subsequent chapter is such a one-up of the chapter before that you're so freaking outraged and surprised and shocked and just enthralled by it. But at the same time, it's to the point where it's not like overdoing it. I mean, if you jump around too quickly, you might end up like DBZ, where it's like we kind of have to end the series now, because I mean, pretty soon we're going to be on the level where we just, you know, sneeze and then a planet blows up. So it's very well spaced, and you know, I don't do these often, but I kind of have to do it for this one, because that's my respect for this chapter. Very well done. Some people are calling it a setup chapter. I guess it is, but what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to have sort of the pages up on my phone, and I won't be doing every single page obviously, but there's some key points I cannot forget to mention. And so first and final spoiler alert warning on the discussion of this week's chapter of Toriko, which just came out. First things first, you know, as always, last week's chapter had to have been one-upped. And so last week's chapter we saw Midora come in, and that in itself was a one-up, because he's coming in on this humongous sort of octopus cat thing, which had a capture level which I don't think was higher than the 4 Beast, but was up to par with the 4 Beast capture level, which was already a one-up during the 4 Beast arc of the previous capture levels experienced in Toriko, which were usually under 100. And so you can see, like, every chapter is just a one-up, and it's very well spaced. I mean, we're still around 500-ish, which is obscene. But then, you know, as far as numbers go, like, we can go to 1,000, 10,000, a million. And so before I forget, one point I want to bring up is that if you have forgotten, the Battle Wolf in its fully matured form obviously is the king of all gourmet beasts. And if that is the case, then it could technically have a power level beyond the scope of everything experienced so far. And so let me just explain to you what this chapter is like. So last chapter we were introduced to this ridiculous level beast that is obviously this Midora person's pet. And then here we see 2 other of his servants surface during this chapter. And then there's obviously this one called Tornagragan, which is, you know, typical sort of many-headed dragon beast with a ridiculous capture level 417, ridiculous, on the level of the 4 beasts. And then we have this really sort of screwed up looking thing. It looks like a giant with lots of muscles, a huge stomach, like a puffed out stomach from eating too much, and just a huge sort of Joker-esque smiley face. This guy has a lower capture level, but at the same time it's just insane, and obviously he looks very, very creepy. I mean, I guess the reason is because of the pronounced head as well as the pronounced leg. The neck is just like extremely pronounced, and obviously the dreadlocks going all the way down his neck. It's very creepy stuff. And so we've come to a point where the capture level captions are and I think this has been happening since the beginning, but it's almost very clear now that these captions are simply from the narrator. There's no way anyone from the human world has captured them and measured them, and so these capture level markings are realistic. These are realistic capture levels based on the freaking narrators / creator. And so we have these 2 other humongous capture levels. So 3 servants, 3 creatures of Midora, and Midora's like, you know, on top of one of them, just like staring down on Ichiryu, making his freaking saber look like nothing. And so I don't want to elaborate too much on this because I can go on like a 50-minute rant on this, but a long story short, ridiculous. I mean, each of these beasts could have been, they're like 5 times the level of some of the grand bosses we experienced at the end of many of these arcs. So you can see the sort of one-upping the author is doing every single chapter. And so the next thing here is we see pretty much, first off, I was like, okay, so Ichiryu lost even though he had 2 of his lackeys who were super powerful, more powerful than Toriko. Both of these lackeys just helping Ichiryu out, and he still lost. And then it seems like, okay, it seems like Midora's left his servant gourmet creatures, and Ichiryu's left his 2 zeroth biotope sort of subordinates to deal with those creatures. And so now Ichiryu's 1 vs 1ing Midora, and this is, now we get to the whole thing that's been brought up. Ichiryu is flying, and so this is on some DBZ level stuff, and he's literally just flying, very similar to the way DBZ characters sort of do it. Whereas, you know how in DBZ it was sort of mentioned and introduced a swan flying tech very briefly during the start of, the end of Dragon Ball, and then it was just sort of not mentioned again. And then you see Goku picking up the ability just by watching it, and then all the other Z warriors sort of picking up this ability, and it was never really mentioned again or explained logically ever since that first mentioning of it as this sort of swan flying technique. And ever since then, it's literally just been sort of flying at will, like you just, and then you just fly. There's nothing else to it. Until of course it was brought up slightly again with adult Gohan and him explaining it to I forgot her name, but Hercule's daughter. And again, I didn't really watch that part, but yeah, so it was very DBZ-esque. That's my whole point. And so I mean, there's debate going on saying, oh, it's not flying, he's using his legs to shoot himself up. But from what I can see from the panel, after he does that, he hovers there for like a good time while conversing, and then he just shoots up into the sky from his hovering stance, and then just flies off far off into space to this distant place where they are battling on these floating continents. And so it's and again, Toriko's gone to a whole nother level. I really respect this manga and the author. It's a shame that in 2013 it has sold less than the top 10 manga series. In fact, Fairy Tail beat out this manga tremendously in a lot of ways. However, I don't judge a manga by the cash it sells by, and quite honestly, there's a lot of good manga, Toriko being one of them. And again, Toriko is not like dead broke, by the way, so I mean it's doing very decent. But you know, there's manga that they don't always get the most money. In fact, a lot of manga series far from it, but by their plot and a lot of stuff, you can tell they by far deserve it more than the manga that are on there. And so I think it's just flying. I think it's just straight up flying. How Toriko as a series has gone to the point where a lot of its chapters, they don't have the time to sort of sit down and break out how he learned to fly or the science behind it. They're just implementing all this new stuff, trying to one-up the chapter before with this new amazing stuff. I mean, have you guys forgotten that Jiro did knocking that sort of shook the planet in almost rotation? And so his knocking, it froze everyone there. In fact, I don't know what would happen if Jiro did that knocking versus Midora or Ichiryu. Would they have just been paralyzed, and then would have Jiro been able to just walk up to them and then just slit their throat? Probably not. But before I go on to too much of a rambling, we go on to a point with freaking Ichiryu leaving his sword behind, his saber. And I don't know what's up with this. Maybe it hampers his fighting style. Maybe it's catered more to sort of preparing food rather than fighting. And so it kind of sort of worries me, or brings up the point: is Ichiryu a chef as well as a gourmet hunter? I mean, it seems like he's the one preparing this epic high preparation salad, which I don't really understand, because I mean, chefs and gourmet hunters, there's huge difference. At least with Toriko and Komatsu, like, they can't really do both, and they really depend on each other, as well as the chefs we've seen in the series. Anyhow, this saber sort of just it falls, and then it just falls into the ground and disappears. Very strange stuff. Maybe some more space and time bending. We don't understand it. And so again, the final thing I really wanted to say is that Midora, I love him as a character. Obviously he's very evil in a lot of ways, how the series depicts it. Yet from a logical standpoint, it's like, it's really not explained. So either they'll have to explain it later, or Ichiryu's group is evil point. From a story standpoint, they're definitely depicting Midora's group, Bishukukai, as the evil ones, the villains. But I mean, Ichiryu is pretty much doing the same thing. They're fighting over food to eat. It's a very selfish sort of thing. Like, from a logical standpoint, no one's really right. And so they take it far away, and I really very much like Midora as a freaking character. Why? Because his freaking locks of hair sort of float in the distance, and they sort of like wiggle around, and just by that nature, especially if you watch the anime, just by that, it's sort of almost like power emanating from this character. And so you can see this, and we see here that okay, Ichirayu is the only one who can fly. Midora really can't. So you can see this sort of his cat octopus sort of using his tentacles to sort of shoot through the air, and it's not like one clean fluid flying swoop. It's more very emotions where he has to keep flapping his tentacles and redirecting the direction. So again, it's a little bit different from DBZ, where it's not something, oh yeah, everyone's just going to pick up flying very quickly. And again, even in DBZ, it didn't happen that quickly. People learned throughout time, and so maybe Midora will learn. I'm pretty sure what happened was Midora killed the guy and leveled further. One thing to note is, again, on this island, there's apparently there's these beasts here, and I'm like, whoa, these creatures, these gourmet creatures on this island are up to par with the sort of creatures that Midora had serving him. And I'm like, are these more of Midora's cronies? Nope. These are freaking stray beasts on the island. And I'm like, holy crap, how is he going to deal with them? And then Ichiryu uses this sort of gravity and just says, shoot kids. And he just sort of easily takes out all these beasts. And so now we sort of see how Toriko has once again one up the chapter before, as well as shown that Ichiryu knew what he was doing. At least he made a good decision on sort of letting Toriko handle the 4 beasts, because I mean, I kind of think that the creator's making this up as he goes, but regardless, in this chapter he's shown that for Ichiryu, the 4 beast was like a piece of cake to him. It was literally less effort than him, like in this chapter, picking up his chopsticks and taking the beasts and eating them. And so that's how he would view the 4 beasts. And so now we finally see the power level of this sort of cat octopus, which is called the ONE-UPPED, at least in the English translation. And ridiculous thing, 600 level capture level, on par with the sort of the 4 beast. And I don't even know what to say. I don't know what to say, because I mean, Ichiryu, a new technique, gravity, is used, and it's sort of I really like how they sort of elaborate on it. So it's not just like gravity in real life. It's a different sort of gravity where just by his presence it sort of draws people in, just by his straight up presence. Nothing to do with science or amount of mass. Well, it does, but on top of that, it is his presence as well. And so final thing I want to say is, again, we see this one quick flashback with young Midora and Ichiryu, and it looks like Midora lost badly to Ichiryu, and Ichiryu chose not to kill Midora. And now Midora's grown up, gained full powers, and Ichiryu's gotten old and obviously possibly lost some powers through age. And so we see this, and it's sort of like a strange dynamic, and I can almost foresee what's going on. It's like these were brothers, disciples. The youngest one sort of lost his ways and became evil, but the older one chose not to kill his brother due to sentimental reasons, and now he's grown up, and the older brother has aged and lost some of his fighting capabilities. Again, a little bit of reminiscence of Hunter x Hunter. And so that's all I have to say about that. It's a very great chapter, and again, Hunter x Hunter is one of those manga, by the way, that I deem worthy of being in the top 10 most sold manga of 2013. And so props to this series. As you can see, I tried my best to just speak as little as I can so I don't ramble and my voice doesn't go hoarse, and yet here's 20 minutes not wasted, but 20 minutes used on this chapter. A lot of respect, and I have no regrets. As always, like, favorite, comment, and subscribe, and leave a comment if you watch all 20 minutes of this. That would be awesome. I just see that and I'd be like, great, someone's actually taking the time to watch this whole thing rather than click through in 1 minute like 90% of people. Thank you. See ya.